Hello, Anja. Hello, Anja Rubik.
How are you?
Oh, I'm fine. I'm fine. Anja, let me just introduce you. Anja Rubik is one of the leading fashion models in the industry. We know her from many, many campaigns. She worked with Karl Lagerfeld and Chanel. She was the first face Anthony Vaccarello shoes for his first campaign for Yves Saint Laurent. But she's so much more. She stands for the struggle for more democracy in her home country, Poland. She wrote a book about sexual education for kids, and she's founding member of the platform Sexed Poland. And since the first campaign of Sex Poland in 2017, and the platform has launched multiple educational campaigns and gives practical knowledge about sexuality to kids, breaking taboos, and fights stigma. Anja, let us talk about sexual education a bit later. First, I want to know from you, as a political campaigner, when you saw the pictures of the protests in Belarus, what were your thoughts about this?
I mean, I'm just going to say I'm not really a political campaigner, but we can go back to that a bit later. But when I saw those images from Belarus, I just feel incredible sadness. And, you know, what is happening there is in some ways happening in many places around the world right now, which is just failing democracy and abuse of power and politicians breaking laws and abuse of human rights. And it's just incredibly sad. At the same time, I really am proud of the people that are fighting for their country, that are fighting for their democracy, and it's really hard to watch.
And why is it always women who stand in the first line in all these protests for change in Europe? What do you think?
Well, I do think, you know, women have been oppressed since centuries, and now is the time for them to step up for things that they really believe in, for their rights. At the same time, you know, you see this not only in Europe, you see this all around the world. I mean, a great example for this is in Chile. I don't know if you followed last year, there was an anti-rape autumn. I think it was called A Rapist in Your Path. So you see really all around the world, women uniting and coming together. I mean, what was incredibly beautiful in Belarus is how they did it. They dressed up in their traditional costumes. They were holding flowers. It was incredibly peaceful. And I do believe actually that women are natural leaders because they're filled with care and they're incredible crisis managers. And also, a woman is less likely to send her son into war than a father. And I think now is the time that the world needs leaders that have empathy. And you see examples of that, you know, around the world. Again, you have Greta Thunberg, you have, you know, Ardern in New Zealand. But in general, what I think is happening is, you know, we all around the world, we are questioning the human legacy. You know, the demanding solutions to failed systems and systems that are not working. And these are systems that have been built by our forefathers when, you know, the world was very different, much smaller and way simpler. So I think right now we're in a moment of shift everywhere.
Yes, and those systems have been built by our forefathers, not our foremothers. Perhaps that's the problem. But why don't you call yourself a political campaigner?
Sorry?
Why don't you call yourself a campaigner?
No, not a campaigner. I just, you know, I'm not a political activist. I don't really go deep down into politics. I start to speak up when human rights are not respected. I chose a subject that I dedicate, you know, a huge part of my life to, which is sex education. sexual education. And to me, this is a subject that should not be political. To me, it's completely absurd that politicians use our sexuality as political ammunition. I think sex applies to every single person on this planet, and it's, I believe, and not just me, by scientists around the world and psychologists and sexologists. I mean, I believe it is impossible to build a safe, tolerant, equal society without sex education. Sex has a huge impact on our lives, on the relationships that we have with others, on self-understanding us, understanding another human being, on safety, understanding our borders, understanding, what is consent, just basic also human behaviors. And without that, it's very hard to move forward. At the end of the day, sex education prepares us for life.
Why is sex education especially so important in Poland? What's the problem in Poland?
Perhaps well, in Poland, we don't really have solid sex education. The program that is right now at school is really not sex education at all. There's no mention of STIs, no mention of really contraception. The information that is in the book is just completely false. It says if you're homosexual, you need to get treated. It's completely absurd. At the same time, we have a government that is pushing a full-on propaganda that is forcing us into feeling shame and guilt for who we are and what we feel. They're against sex education. They say that sex education sexualizes children, which actually is the complete opposite, because when you look at countries that have solid sex education, the first moment of sexual initiation is actually usually later, because kids understand their bodies, understand the changes, understand their boundaries. They don't feel the pressure from their surrounding to have this already behind you. They're more confident. And thanks to that, they start things a little bit later when they are ready. So everything that is happening right now it is so important because we don't have that sex education. We have a society where stereotypes are still deeply rooted in our society. So, you have ignorance, and with ignorance comes fear, and with fear comes intolerance and homophobia and transphobia and misleading information and a lot of things that are completely very easy to avoid. And in Poland, it's education is everything. It gives you power, and this comes, this is also really important to sex education. Right now in Poland, the government is trying to actually push through a law that would ban sex education below the age of 18. Now, keep in mind that in Poland, legally, you can have sex from the age of 15. So that leaves a gap of 3 years where you don't know anything. I mean, I believe sex education should even start earlier, because let's remember, sex education is a huge, huge subject. Doesn't only connect directly to sexual activity, but it's like giving a kid at 15 keys to a car, and then saying, here are the keys, here's the car, but actually we're going to teach you how to drive in 3 years' time when you're going to be 18. It's completely irresponsible, and it's just going to force generations of kids into a life of ignorance and then increased risk, because education is power. It keeps us actually safe.
Anja, there are some people in Poland who really hate you for doing that, what you do. How do you cope with that attacks?
Well, I don't focus on it. Thank you for reminding me. I don't focus on it. I only focus on the positive. SEXEDpl, which is the foundation that I started in 2017, has been doing incredible work. As you mentioned, in 2018, I published a book, which is a series of conversations with specialists and psychologists and sexologists, and that book actually became a bestseller in the country. We sold over, I think at this point, 210,000 copies, which is incredible for a book that is purely educational. And we have workshops, we have so much content, educational content that we put out every single week, a lot of incredible projects that mix fashion and art and music to bring people closer, because what I really believe in is that sex education needs to be part of our everyday life, because sex is, so it needs to be part of our reality. Anyway, we do so much good, and I get so much good feedback at the same time on daily basis. People that write to the foundation that thank us. We, you know, help really thousands of people every year directly. We have regular online chats with specialists. We have TikTok talks with specialists on our platform. So we do so much good that is just not, there's no comparison. You know, I don't focus on the bad, I only focus on the good. And I really feel that it's, you know, it's crucial for future generations to have proper sex education. I always say, safe sex, safe world.
And in Germany, just a few people would say, for example, that homosexuality is an illness. But for example, a few days ago, Friedrich Merz, one of the conservative politicians who wants to run for chancellor, brought homosexuality together with child abuse. He said, well, homosexuals, they are okay as long as they don't touch children. Do we have a message for him?
Well, I think he's been watching some of Polish TV. That's where he came up with that idea. Well, my message to him is, go back to school, get your facts right. You can have your opinions, but facts are facts. And the facts are, you know, even the World Health Organization in 1990, if I remember well, all the scientists came together and said that homosexuality is not a disease, it's not an illness, it's just a sexual orientation. So I think the guy needs to get some education. I think he can come and call up ZEIT and we can help him out.
Anja, it was so great talking to you. All the good for your work, and thank you for being with us.
Thank you so much. Thank you.